Of the candidates interviewed so far, who should Buccaneers fans want as their offensive coordinator? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKloskyWTSP. We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can find my work as the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. And I am here with you every Monday through Friday. Evan is here on Wednesdays and sometimes Thursdays. And, here when I need him for that moral support. But as always, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become an insider. Locked On Bucs insiders get news, inside scoop, rumors, and just daily one-on-one conversations with me via text message. You can become an insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to sign up. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So what kind of impact does Baker Mayfield have on the Buccaneers coordinator search? And former Buccaneers head coach sounds off about some of their key players. That's coming up in a little bit. But Evan, let's start things off with the continuing search of offensive coordinator. And I really haven't been able to speak with you about this at all. I think it was like 14 or 16 hours after we recorded last week's show that it was announced that Dave Canales was going to Carolina as the head coach. So let's start there. Kind of your overall thoughts on Dave Canales leaving for Carolina and the Buccaneers having to search for an offensive coordinator for the second straight year.
It's a big bummer. And I don't want to make it into something that's bigger than what it is, because I feel like a lot of fans, made this out to be like the greatest offensive mind has left Tampa Bay. And, that sucked. But the thing that's a bummer is because we saw this offense grow midway through the season into the playoffs. And you would imagine with Dave there at OC, you're going to pretty much guarantee everybody coming back, I think, and continue to try to build off that continuity. B, if the offense was something that was electric, I don't know how many more years Todd Bowles has as head coach. I mean, he says he's not going to do this forever. He ain't doing this till 70. So, there's a little bit of, could you have made Dave the head coach in waiting? You have another big year next year. That is, he's most likely gone anyway. But I would have said the same thing about Slowick and Ben Johnson, and look, they're entering 2024 remaining in their OC roles. So Dave had a lot of head coaching potential. On the outside, just black and white terms, this is a ridiculous rise for Dave Canales. And I mean, he's mentally built for it. I am a little bit concerned. My whole thing was, and we talked about this a little bit off the pod, he's got the goods, but it still feels too soon. The offense wasn't amazing by many metrics. If you cut the season in half, it was better in many ways, but the rushing attack was still bottom of the league. Points per game was still below average. Baker still threw 10 interceptions. So there were a lot of things that needed to be ironed out. And obviously, blitzes off the corners from the secondary is how they were flummoxed in the postseason against Detroit. And there was a little bit of a book out against Dave. And we saw that a little bit in Saints, Carolina, Detroit to an extent, though Dave masterfully handled Philly, and I would even say the Lions to a degree. With some execution things, I believe that they could have ran it up. Baker could have threw for 400, but it just stinks because you had this amazing season, unexpected. He was a part of that. He was part of this youthful exuberance, and now he's gone. Goody's gone. Gilbert's gone. Keith Armstrong has retired. So coaching-wise, in a year where there's so much to build on with this Buccaneers team, the brain trust has to do a lot of work to get the band suited again to gear up for another run in 2024. And it does lend yourself to the worries of, how many people are really going to hitch their wagon to Todd Bowles because, he earned his job entering next season. But I have a hard time believing he's not going to be on somewhat of a hot seat if the Buccaneers take a step back in 2024. So I think people are more of a believer in the Buccaneers team now than what they were last year. But the situation, the question surrounding, is Todd Bowles going to be around longer than a year? I don't know if anyone can really give someone a great answer of saying, yeah, he'll definitely be here into 2025. But, they could also turn around and say, hey, look, we brought in someone last year who we all, people thought this was such a terrible gig. And now he's one of 32 leading an NFL team. So, I think the situation's pretty good down here.
Yeah, well, and the Bucs have officially interviewed some candidates, and there are some that still have more interviews on the way. You got Antoine Randall L., Brian Johnson, Alex Van Pelt, Thad Lewis, Tanner Engstrand, Jake Peets, John Van Dam. Who do you feel is the favorite, kind of the leader in the clubhouse right now out of those candidates that are publicly known that have either conducted interviews or are scheduled to conduct interviews?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. There isn't a wow you type of offensive coordinator candidate out there. And that's not to say anything about Todd Bowles. I mean, people want to complain about, Zach Robinson, right? He was always going to go with Raheem Morris to Atlanta. He worked with Raheem. That was most likely not going to happen. They wanted to bring him in for an interview. He said, screw it, I'm following Raheem. Kellen Moore took the job in Philly. Unequivocally, that offense with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Swift, Devonta Smith, the offensive line, they made it to the Super Bowl just a year ago. That's a better situation than the Buccaneers. I don't think many can argue that, even with the Buccaneers pasting them in the playoffs this season. So I don't think that's a repudiation on Bowles and the Buccaneers either. So, even with Zach Robinson, who we liked a lot because of the system, and Kellen Moore, who was been solid as an OC, more so in Dallas than what he was last year with the Chargers, though there are injury issues there. It's really kind of like tough to give you a gauge of who the favorite is, because last year I would have never said Dave Canales. Nobody knew who Dave Canales was. When he was hired, we were all like, what the hell is this? Who is this? And were they that desperate that they hired him? And, there was Dave coming in day one being like, hey guys. And, the rest was history, and we all bought into that. So, I would keep an open mind out there for any fans. You just simply do not know what you have until they get thrown into the fire. And if I had to say who a favorite was, only because we know a little bit more about him, he is an internal candidate, and he seems to be one of these up-and-comer types, widely respected in the league, also a fast riser. That would be Thad Lewis.
All right, well, we're going to find out who Evan's favorite candidate is. And while the Bucs are looking to retain Baker Mayfield for next year and beyond, what kind of impact does that have in their offensive coordinator search? That is next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. But thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. Is it halftime? That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That's your cue to order in. Order pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. You can even order your team's gear from local spots and have it dropped off directly at your door if you need to change up the luck that you're having by halftime. I know with my kids' crazy schedules, there's a lot of eating on the run, and sometimes I'll place a DoorDash order as we're leaving the ice rink or the basketball court, so the food is waiting for us when we pull in the driveway. All of your favorite restaurants and stores, from retail to grocery, are on the app, so you can shop everything that you need to get game day ready. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED, the number 2, the number 3. Subject to change, terms apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs first listener view every single day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I spoke on yesterday's episode about Thad Lewis, who did have his interview completed Wednesday morning. And I started talking about maybe he's not so much the leader anymore. You're taking a look at all those vacancies. It might be better off for the Bucs to bring in an outside guy who's going to bring in other outside guys. You need a wide receivers coach. You need an offensive line coach. You might need a run game coordinator. So there's other positions to be filled there. But you take a look back at that list of names that I rattled off. Do you have a personal favorite of a guy that you look at what they've done in the past and where they've been and think, you know what, this would be a great fit for the Buccaneers this season?
I really don't. I mean, I like Thad Lewis. Again, it would be a high risk, high reward hire. I don't know if Todd Bowles is willing to hitch his wagon on another first-time play caller and take that risk. But look, Thad knows Baker Mayfield, worked very closely with him, worked closely with Dave Canales. And if you want someone to have really an understanding of what this team built this past year and how to make it a little bit better, Thad would probably have a pretty good opinion on what to do there. I'm interested to hear how John Van Dam does in his interview as well. The tight ends coach for the Buccaneers throwing his hat in the ring. He's going to get an interview as well. But we look at teams. I think naturally we gravitate towards, Pete's in LA working with Sean McVay. And again, that's the type of offense that really was run by Canales to a certain extent, something that's very QB friendly, run focused. And that's really what Todd Bowles wants too. That's why Alex Van Pelt is in the mix as well. If you want an experienced play caller, someone who worked with Baker Mayfield would understand that. Somebody who probably has a list of guys he can bring in to fulfill some of those positions because he's been around and probably has a nice Rolodex. I think that there are some things that he might bring to the table as well, especially considering his rushing prowess and how much he leans on the rushing game is on top of that. But if you look at EPA and certain statistics, Alex Van Pelt is not going to wow you. So I don't necessarily know if that's to me that's more of a safe hire. I think what you're getting there. I tend to lean towards I rather go for someone young and pretty, right? Versus maybe the retread. So I think if I had to pick somebody, it would be Thad Lewis. But, I don't say that confidently. I just like last year, there were a lot of great names. The one name that I am curious on who hasn't come out yet, Clint Kubiak and Brian Greasy, people part of the Shanahan tree. Clint Kubiak interviewed last year. I think that's and not to mention he had offensive coordinator experience in Minnesota before Zimmer was fired. So he's a guy who's done it before. He's tinkered around, I'm sure, with his systems. I don't count what he had to do in Denver last year, filling in for Hackett, because you're really just trying to get through it. But I would say maybe holding out for the Niners people is something you want to do unless you fall in love with one of these candidates. But, there's like 7 to 8 OC jobs still remaining.
Yeah.
So if you like someone, you got to pounce.
Guess we'll find out. All right. Well, real quick, I feel it's important to touch on this. A big reason that Canales got that job in Carolina was the performance of Baker Mayfield. He wants to stay in Tampa. The Bucs want him to stay in Tampa, but it's not a foregone conclusion that he does stay in Tampa. So with that said, what kind of impact do you think Baker has on Jason Light and Todd Bowles as they search for a new coordinator?
I think it's important. If Baker's not back, they have no QB. And they have Kyle Trask again, right? So, entering last year, it was a huge question mark of what the Buccaneers were going to be, period, at the QB position. It's still the most important. And now that you saw Baker, you got the 5-star Yelp reviews from all the colleagues and coworkers. You want to start figuring out a plan, imagining he's going to come back. I'm sure you're going to hear about other teams pursuing him. Guess what? You want to know how you get more money? You create a market. So I would not be surprised to see a team like the Falcons, right, who have been rumored to be interested in Baker, especially with Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, 2 guys who have worked with him before, understand what he's been able to do. If they throw their hat in the ring for a guy like Baker, just to put pressure on the Buccaneers to ante up a little bit more. You're in the division. You want their cap situation to be negotiated in some respect. If you're Raheem Morris, do you really want to go all in on your second chance as a head coach on Baker Mayfield? That's a question he has to answer. But ultimately, I think that Baker's enjoyment of the season goes beyond Dave Canales. Of course, what Canales did was important, and he had a great time coming into work and was very complimentary of Dave. Nothing against Dave. When you get a head coaching gig, you got to take it. And so it really is a kudos to him, and good luck in Carolina. And, for Buccaneers fans, hope you get smashed half the year, right? And especially the 2 against Tampa Bay. But I think that Baker is a part of the puzzle. You have to also think about life without Baker too. You can't just say this guy is for Baker only, because even if you sign Baker, it's going to be probably a 2 or 3, I would say a 3 to 4 year deal that you can get out of in 2 to 3 years, right? I mean, it's going to be a bridge type deal. I don't think, you're locking him in long term to be the Buccaneers quarterback. So you got to have an open mind to everything. And I think that he'll be a part of the plans. And I would be shocked if, because again, he's under the Buccaneers umbrella, they can still talk with him, that they weren't able to discuss, hey, what are your thoughts on this person? What are your thoughts there? It just, I feel like Baker would love to stay in town. And I think the Buccaneers would love to have him. And unless someone comes over the top and offers him just a ridiculous deal that the Buccaneers need to wish him well, sort of in a Dave Canales type of situation where it's like, can't compete with that, then I think it will all mesh together.
Well, a former Buccaneers head coach had some interesting things to say about some key players, including Baker Mayfield. That's coming up next here on Locked On Bucs. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers, so instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this football season has been the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, and if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. PrizePicks is really simple to play, and I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. For the big game, I'm going with Christian McCaffrey to have more than 90.5 rushing yards and more than 36.5 receiving yards. Travis Kelce, more than 49.5 receiving yards. Isaiah Pacheco, more than 0.5 total touchdowns. And George Kittle, less than 0.5 total touchdowns. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs. And yesterday, I talked about ESPN's top 50 free agents list, where the Bucs made up 10% of it, and had 5 of the 7 players from the NFC South that were featured. Those players that I'm referring to are Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, and Devin White. Now, former Buccaneers head coach and current senior advisor to Jason Light, Bruce Arians, told Ira Kaufman, quote, "I don't think we're losing any of them. Mike wants to stay here and they're going to pay him. I think Mayfield loves it here and is totally appreciative of the opportunity he found in Tampa. He loves the guys and the guys love him," end quote. Now, Arians, in that quote, only spoke specifically about Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield, but started off by saying he doesn't think the Bucs are losing any of those guys. Evan, do you share in Bruce Arians' confidence that the Bucs are going to retain all these players?
I do. I don't know if Bruce necessarily has like I've heard from Jason, and Bruce, I think sometimes he looks a little outside on the inside more these days, just because proximity, he's not in the building every day like he always is. But I just tend to believe, as someone who has a pulse on the building, which is Bruce Arians, and understands the higher ups and what they're looking for. If he's saying something like that, there is a certain amount of weight you got to put in it. But even so, I would imagine Mike, coming off the season of what he did, Baker and the combo that he had with Mike, it's tough to separate the two. And if you take Mike out of the equation of this offense, it's dire. He draws significant attention. He is also, you can pencil him in for 1,000 and probably, 6 to 12 tutties, right? Like, I mean, what you get. You know what you're getting out of this man. And that production is uber important. I mean, if we're talking about wins above replacement, I don't know what that would be, but I would imagine that Mike by himself gets you at least 2 to 3 wins on some of those games where he wallops a 150 and 2 tutties. He has his games also where he vanishes, but even in the games that he vanishes, it's because he's drawing so much attention. So, and it opens things up for other people. So I would imagine if you want a good OC candidate too, they want to know, hey, how's my personnel look like? Am I going to have this future Hall of Famer there for another couple of years, or what's up? So I do lean towards Baker and Mike Evans returning. I also then think the conversation turns towards, does Levante want to retire? If not, they'll give him whatever he wants for him to stay. We think, Devin's gone and Antoine Winfield Jr. is going nowhere. So I do think that 3 return for sure. 4 is up to Levante. 5 ain't happening because Devin's gone. And then I think really this next year we're talking about, is this the swan song for Chris Godwin? Because I don't know how you can rationally pay 2 wide receivers north of $20 million who are in their 30s, right? I mean, that's going to be the tough conversation and what we're going to have to figure out this upcoming year. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you 100%. I think I'm now more confident in the Buccaneers retaining Mike Evans after hearing what Bruce Arians had to say. I've been confident that they're going to keep Baker. I've been confident that they're going to keep Antoine. I've said numerous times, even through the season, that Devin White's gone. And I think Levante's up to Levante. You're 100% right. So, interesting things from Bruce Arians. But that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Make sure that you are coming back tomorrow as we wrap up the week and continue to look at the Buccaneers coaching search. In the meantime, check out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Check out my work over at bucksnation.com. Become a Locked On Bucs insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs. And of course, follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at eCloskey WTSP. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.